My name is Twala, Managing Director of Ntsu Aviation Solutions and the CEO of Rectron Drone Academy.
Beautiful, beautiful. So for me to operate one of these drones, I understand I need a license to do so. So if I'm just coming from my matric, I just qualified, I just got my matric. So what do I need for me to qualify for these things? To be an operator of this thing, yeah.
Okay. All right. For one to qualify as a drone pilot license, using the example that you just made now for
from
someone
matric,
who just completed a matric. So the nice thing about, let me call it a license for to be able to operate drone is the minimum requirement is you must be of the right age, meaning you must be 18 years.
Or 18 and above.
That would be only minimum qualification.
Okay.
Anything beyond that point, the training school will teach you everything from the English language proficiency, radio telephony, theory, how to fly a drone, how to pilot a drone. So everything will then be taught through a training school.
Is it?
So yes, that's how the process works. So yeah, anyone with matric, I'm not matric 18 years, no.
And above. Also, it's not dependent on your matric. So anyone, even if you don't have a matric, but you are above the age.
That is correct. Even if you don't have a matric, yes.
No, that's it.
Yes.
So in terms of the duration of the course, how long is it?
Now, with a duration, we don't really have a fixed time or period. How long does it take? The reason being, the pilot training, it's more individual focused.
Okay.
In a sense that what would only be mandatory for a training school would be attending a theory class, which typically would be 5 days, Monday to Friday. Anything beyond that, we focus on a student. Because once you've completed theory, you have an examination that you have to write, 2 examinations actually, one being for radio telephony, and then the other one for drone, which will be a CAA approved syllabus. So once you complete your theory, you give you time to go through the mock exams and practice. And once you say, I'm ready, I can write an examination, we book an examination slot for you, you write an examination. Once you pass both exams, the next stage would be now the practical flying. Now we take you to the field, take the actual drone, now we teach you how to fly. That's how it works. And even with teaching how to fly, we don't have like minimum hours or maximum hours until the instructor says you are ready. Then you can complete. Some people take 3 days, some people to take 2 weeks. However, on average, I would say most people will be able to complete pilot training license within 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay. No, that's fair. That's fair. So I hear you talking about telephony and that. So do you need also etiquettes, the language, the jargon, like Mayday, for you to operate this? Do you need to know that as well? Is that what you are referring to?
Definitely, you need to know that because this might be a drone. However, the bottom line is you're going to share the airspace with other aircraft. And at some point, you're going to be on a radio, which is a VHF band that is used by all pilots, that is used by air traffic controller. So when you talk to other airspace users, you need to be breathing from the same hymn sheet so that you understand each other. So that is part of the training when we were talking about the radio telephone. Those are some of the things that they teach you. The other training that you do is a language proficiency. Now with a language proficiency, we're looking at how well you enunciate your words, how well will the other person be able to hear you on the other side. So it's not only about leading the jargon, but it's also
can you communicate?
Yeah. So that's part of the training, radio telephony and English. We call it English language proficiency.
Now that makes sense. Yes. And then in terms of, I also heard another speaker talking about the disability, that there are people that cannot qualify because of their disabilities and all that. Can you just go into that as well?
Definitely. Firstly, I must start by saying it's a little bit unfortunate that would be the case. And the reason why I'm saying that is, if we go back to drone legislation, where it comes from, some of requirements were borrowed from manned aviation, from traditional aviation. And the classic one, what was borrowed was aviation medical. Because as you understand, you need to be medically fit to be in aviation, right? And one of the standards or regulations which were borrowed is what you call Class 3 medical assessment. Now, when you look at Class 3 medical assessment, the standards, or as a pilot, what you need to go through to be tested, it's standard, because it comes from main aviation. One of the things that would be in that test would be, for example, your lung functionality. Being able to be at an altitude, right? Because as a pilot, the assumption or the understanding before drones was you're going to be at an altitude. So your lungs, their health, the list of things, prescribed tests that you have to go through. Now, the unfortunate part is those tests, they don't make sense when it comes to drones, because you are on the ground, firmly on the ground. So your lung function, doesn't really make any difference. However, it is a requirement because it comes from borrowed requirements, borrowed regulations. They need to review. That conversation is actually taking place. I'm time and again have this conversation with Civil Aviation Authority and Medical Committee to amend that. However, what we've done recently with that process and how we managed to open those conversations, as a training school, what we've actually done together with some of our partners was to go with real life cases where we recruited 5 students who 2 of them are sitting on a wheelchair. One is using crutches, actually 3 are on a wheelchair, and then 1 is using crutches. And we're trying to show to the Civil Aviation Authority and aviation community that you can fly, you'll be able to fly drones safely even if you're on a wheelchair. And that process is going quite well because one student who's sitting on a wheelchair got their medical certification, which is Class 3. And the student was found to be medically fit, because you are family seated on the ground, or in this instance sitting on the wheelchair, and what you have is a controller. You fly your drone. What you will need is someone to assist you, because the mobility, yes, might be a challenge, to be able to do pre-flight inspection on your drone once the drone is landed, being able to change a battery, and. So as long as you have an assistant, that should be fine. But you as a pilot, you will be able to fly a pilot and you'll be able to safely operate a drone. So yes, it has been a bit of a challenge on the medical side, but that starts to change. It's starting to change.
So in terms of, because when this initiative of drone started, licensing, I think it was somewhere around 30,000 cost. So I want to know, is this still the same amount that you're still paying to get this licensing? Are you still looking at it?
Oh yeah, the cost changed drastically over the years. I mean, as you would imagine, as a commercial entity right at the beginning, the first school, that got a license to be able to train pilots, I could go as far as saying they were exploiting the system because they were the only ones, right? And they knew for you to be able to fly drone commercially, you need to go through licensing. So they were charging exorbitant amount of money. That changed over the years. The cost changed, lowered drastically. However, we can still lower the cost, quite a lot. Particularly if we review regulations. There are some of the assessments. One good classic example that we spoke about would be your Class 3 medical assessment. If we could have probably, yes, I understand that there still need to be some medical fitness that you need to go through. For example, you need to be able to see, you need to be able to hear. We can't move away from that. But the cost for medical, if you move away from Class 3, go to something that is drone specific, you already cut the cost for medical assessment. Right? And then the process is on the CAA side, the regulations themselves. We need to start drawing a line between someone flying a drone at a high risk or big drones, and someone who's flying a smaller drone, say drone that weighs 250 grams, because the risk and which are involved is quite little. So we need to then start to have different types or levels for licensing. For one, where someone is flying at international level, which already we have standards through International Civil Aviation Organization. And then domestically, we then have those drone operations which will be high risk. Yes, you need high level of pilot license. However, for certain operations, like someone who's using a drone to think of a real estate agent, all their interest in flying a drone is to take a picture of the house. Flying very small drone, you don't fly that high, and that's all that you do. Fly 5-10 meters above ground, take a picture and land. So the training, like radio telephony, it will not be required because you are not necessarily high enough or sharing airspace with other airspace users for you for a license to warrant one to have a radio telephony license. So as soon as we get to that point where we draw those differences and we segment the drone license, then that will bring a cost even lower.
So in terms of employability, since this is a fairly new thing in South Africa, so a young man from Soweto wants to be qualified as a drone operator. So after qualifying, where can I go and take my CV as an operator of this thing? So in terms of employability, I don't know if I'm making sense.
I'm with you, yes.
Yeah. So if after completing, where can I go and submit my CV as a drone operator?
Okay. So as a drone pilot, just qualified drone pilot, your options really, if you're looking for an employment, is currently in South Africa we have about, last time I checked, at least about 85 to 90 approved drone operators. Because yourself as a pilot, if you get your pilot license, you still need to work under a licensed operator. Because as a RPL license holder, you still don't have don't meet all the requirements to be able to fly a drone commercially. There must still be a license, working under licensed operator. So where you can take your CV, if that's what you're looking for, is those operators. And if you go to civil aviation website, there's a list of all operators on the website. However, what I could probably also add to that is what I sometimes encourage young people, or whoever who's looking at getting into this industry, don't only look at finding an employment as a pilot license, but what you can do. There are a lot of opportunities which do not really need a lot of money to get into this industry. So be an entrepreneur, look at operating these drones and to benefit yourself as an entrepreneur and get into the space, not only to find an employment. Opportunities are there.
So in terms of to other countries, when you do this, is it because I've seen like country like Botswana, Namibia, Lesotho and Mozambique, it's not a must for you to have a license. You can just fly the drone. So in South Africa, is it a must to fly it, maybe in terms of like the mining site, without a licensing?
Okay. So when it comes to licensing, perhaps let me start here. Aviation, it's international. Traditionally it has always been like that, which is why we have International Civil Aviation Organization, which is a United Nations body. So all aviation standards come from that international body. However, with drones, what was different was at a time, to a great extent even now, International Civil Aviation Organization, they are still busy drafting standards, which are not ready yet, for publication as far as applicable to anyone, who wants to operate drones. So, with that being the case, so what happened? What most countries did, they then drafted their own regulations based on how they see drones being regulated in a particular country, same as South Africa. So that's why when you look at our drone regulations, they are only applicable and valid within the borders of South Africa. They are domestic, meaning a license that you get or issued by a civil aviation authority is not necessarily valid outside the borders of the country, like Botswana, like Zimbabwe, and the likes. Everyone or every country, they have their own standards and their own regulations. So, however, with most other countries, previously what they used to do, they used to accept South African issued license. However, they are not necessarily obliged to accept it. So that would be, the structure in that sense that our regulations are domestic. The license is only valid within the borders of the country.